Hi folks, today we're going to be talking about how to tune and string your guitar properly. I'm going to be talking about what I consider the proper way to string a guitar so that none of the strings slip, so that it will stay in tune over the length and the life of the strings. Let's get started. Why do we learn how to string a guitar properly? Because we don't want to end up with those weird blobs of strings around the top. That often happens. I see that so often. Somebody's just done some sort of weird thing. They bend a string or whatever, and the string moves just slightly in the little blob back here, and it's a mess. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the old strings. Now you can see, if you look carefully, I'm going to try to move this up, you can see that these were done with a luthier's knot. You can see on this one here especially, that they were all done, put on with the luthier's knot. I always get criticisms that luthier knot is impossible to remove. So I'm going to do it in real time here. Normally what you would do is you would bring the string around and you would just bring it to the hole and then you would pull it out. And you can see that's exactly what I did. Now that was with a luthier's knot on the end. So I'm going to do it again, show you how tough it is to do to remove these strings. It is not tough. It takes about an extra half a second longer than what you normally would take. You saw that came right off. No big deal. If you were doing this live, I'm not sure why you would want to have to do it faster than that. Now people will say, well gee Mike, if you're live doing it, you really need it to come off really quickly. And that's true. But if it's done right, you can see it just comes right off. I'm going to do it again. I should wear my glasses when I do this. So I bring it to where the hole is. Now, if you didn't do a luthier's knot, that would have already come off. That's definitely correct. But all I'm doing is I just bring it, just past that little knot thing, and it's done. You can see it took me probably less than a minute to pull all the strings off. What I'm doing now is I'm going to use a little bit of white gas, they call it, or naphtha, and I'm using a Scotch-Brite pad that has it's essentially a plastic pad. This is an ebony fingerboard, and it's I'm just going to clean it off. You can see it's getting the dirt off very nicely. What I do is I clean it up and I just wipe off the dirt as I go. You can see it's all coming off nicely. And I just do this up the fingerboard. I go a little bit both ways across the fingerboard, and I'll go up and down on it too. Just trying to get any ugly dirt off of there. You can see it's coming off quite nicely. So the next thing I do is I go over the fingerboard and I polish off the frets. I'll do that with a car polish. So when I polish the frets, I like to use just a little bit of a white polishing compound. This works very well on the metal to bring it up nice and bright and make it really very glassy smooth. You can see right away it's turning like black. I go back and forth. You can see already that the frets look much cleaner and much shinier. Next, I will use a little bit of mineral oil and beeswax, combination on the fingerboard just to give it a little protection. So I'm just putting a little bit of mineral oil and beeswax on here. Nothing that would hurt the finish, nor hurt the wood. In fact, this is very nice for any kind of exposed wood. I wouldn't put this on the finish, it's too heavy for that, but it's good for this. I'm going to put some on here, let it sit for just a moment or two, and then wipe off the excess and really sort of scrub down, get the excess off. but I'm going to leave it on for just a minute or so. See, that's even gotten some of the dirt, some more dirt off. Okay. Next up, I'm going to clean these slots out. They're looking a little dirty, and I'm going to just use a little piece of 1200 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to run it through the slot a little bit just to get it cleaned out a little. I will re-graphite these slots before I put the strings on, or after I get the strings on. I'll put some graphite in these slots to get them nice and slick again. While I have the strings off, I always like to check the collars of the tuners and make sure that they're tight. And I also like to check the screws on the back and make sure the ones that are holding the tuners on, that they're snug also. These collars, although they look like nut type collars, they are not. These are press-on, press-fit collars. So obviously they're not going to turn and tighten down. But if you have a die-cast tuner, these would be good to check at this point. Another thing to check while you have all the strings off is just clean up the body, especially under the where you flat pick and where you strum. There's going to be a lot of dust and dirt under there. We'll call it dust and dirt. What it really is often is dead skin. But it's a good thing to check out. And again, give your guitar a nice wipe down before you go and put the new strings back on. Okay, now when you're stringing the guitar, you want to put the ball end in, obviously, into the bridge, and the string pin to follow it in. This is important that you get this set right. I generally try to get the ball ends going in so that the rounded side goes in toward the saddle, and I follow it in with the pin, and I look for, what I'm feeling for is for the ball end to sit flush against the bridge plate, which is underneath here. It's a bridge plate in here underneath, and I want it to be so that when I push the pin in for the last inch, half inch or so, or quarter inch, that the string doesn't move. In other words, I know that the ball end is not sitting against the bottom of the bridge pin. Okay, I don't want it like stuck on the end here. Now, one of the things you can do is you can ramp the end of your bridge pin slightly. You can put a slight ramp on that. Let me see if I have ramped these. No, I haven't. So I'm going to ramp these so I can show you what that looks like. To ramp this pin, in other words, to put a slight angle on the end of the pin so that the ball end will not stick to the end, so that it'll sit where it should, all you need to do is take it at about a 45-degree angle with the slots of the pin, the slots are right here, facing the sandpaper. And then just pull it across a couple times like that, and you get a very satisfying, and see if I can show that to you. You see the slight angle on the end there of the pin, on the far side there, this little angle over here. That'll keep the pin from holding, the ball end, and will allow the ball end to sit where it should against the bridge plate. So you just do like that. And we'll do the rest here in a minute. I do want to show you the other side of this. The other side is how to string this end. Okay, so what I like to do when I'm stringing a guitar is I like to first get all the holes on the bridge pins lined up so that they're running the same direction as the fingerboard. Okay, so I'm going to take this E string and I'm going to put it through the hole here. I'm going to leave, some different people do this different ways. I'm going to leave about a hand's width of slack on this. In other words, I pull it through, and that's my hand's width, and that's how much I know is going to go around the post. I'm going to point you back down to the post here so you can see what I'm doing here. So I've got that hand's width on there. I will bend the string, this string, toward the center of the fingerboard. If I was going through this side, I would bend it this way. But since I'm going through this way, I go towards the center of the fingerboard. I go back under the string. You can see I've gone under the string itself while holding this string tight against the post. I've gone back under the string and then back against itself. You'll see that there's a little kink, and that's a proper way to string this up. I'm going to tighten this down. I'll get about 2 to 3 windings around the post tops, but you'll notice the first thing that happens is that the string bends against itself. It essentially locks the string in place. I go around, that's one time. There's the second. You can see I've only got about 2 times around the post, and it's all done. I'll take my wire clippers, I take them right up against the post. You can see right up against it where the string is, and I clip it right there, and it's off. Makes for a nice clean cut string and a clean look to the string. Now this string will not slip. It will not slip. And you saw I got it off. Taking it off was no big deal either. So now some people will say, gosh, Mike, that seems overly complex and it takes too long. I just want to string my guitar. So I'm going to show you in real time what that might look like if I don't do it slow for you. It takes me about 5 to 6 minutes to string a guitar. So I'm going to do it. Right now I'm just putting the ball end in. This is the A string. I'm bringing it up. I'm leaving about my hand's width on top. So I do it towards the center, bend it towards the center, go underneath itself, back against itself, and I'm now tuning it up. It goes very fast. There's once around the post. We're coming up on twice around the post, and there you go. I cut off the excess, and we're done. So you can see it takes me about 6 minutes to string a guitar. Sometimes less, it really depends on the guitar. I may have like a guitar that if it has locking tuners, I mean, obviously it can go really, really fast. But what you're not seeing right now is that I'm actually ramping each of these pins like I did the first one. That's why it's taking me an extra 3 or 4 seconds there down the other end. So again, I've gone through the hole, right? The string is through the hole, see right here. I'm now creating slack with my other hand. I go back, underneath, and back against itself. By the way, I pull nice and tight against the post so that there's no way that string can slip. If there's just nothing that's going to slip or move. There's once around the post. Here it comes twice. And it's coming up to pitch now. It happens very quickly. Now again, on the other side, if I'm doing the other side of the fingerboard, or I'm sorry, yes, the other side of the fingerboard, or the strings on this side of the headstock, you bend the string the other direction. You bend it always towards the center of the fingerboard, or the center of the headstock, either one. You want to do it that way. Now I'm just ramped the bridge pin. Okay, I'm going back up here, leaving the slack I need, bending towards the center of the fingerboard, or headstock, you see that? Underneath itself, I'm pulling this string nice and tight here against the post, back against itself. Now, I do have a machine that does peg winding. I prefer to do it by hand because I just have more control over it that way. There's 2 full times around, and you can see always end up with a nice amount around the post. Doing the B string now. Ramping the bridge pin. Well, you can't see me doing that, but you can sort of hear it. There you go. That's me going over some sandpaper with it. Bingo, that's done. Let the slack I needed go towards the center of the headstock, underneath the string and back against itself. Now I realize there are going to be a lot of guys out there that are cringing every time I do that little luthier's not there. They're like, oh, they're impossible to remove. The fact is that they aren't. What are impossible to remove are some of the other weird ways that people do this. Some people will take the string and fish it twice through the hole. That's unnecessary, completely unnecessary. And honestly, that can slip also. If you don't do that right, it can slip. I've seen it. I've seen it on people who brought guitars in and they've done twice through the hole, and the string slips. And it slips in funny ways, not ways you would expect. This way it can't. It actually is tied against itself. Again, I'm leaving the slack. You can see it here. I'm going up and leaving slack, the width of my hand. I bring the string around the post towards the center of the headstock, and while holding the string tight around the post, I go back against itself, and then essentially 2 to 3 windings around the post is all it takes. There's one. It's coming up in 2. There's 2, and there you go. So there it is. That's essentially stringing a guitar. A steel string. Now this is not all guitars, but it certainly works for a steel string. So you saw me string up the guitar. I have not graphited the nut, and I do that every time I change strings. This guitar had not had its strings changed in quite a while, and obviously had not had the nut or any of that cleaned for quite a while, so that's why I cleaned it out. You don't normally have to do that, but I cleaned it out because it was obvious there was some gunk in there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to graphite the nut, and all I do is I pop the strings out one at a time. Let me turn this down a little bit. Pop the strings out one at a time, and I take a pencil and I put it in the slot, and I just go back and forth in the slot, pushing a little bit of graphite. This is a very soft pencil, graphite pencil, and I just put it in there, and that's plenty. A little bit in there. I do it in each slot. You don't have to empty the pencil in the slot. You just have to put a little in there. They're all graphited. Now I'll just tune it up and we should be good to go. Okay, I cut away for a second just to tune all the strings up to pitch. They're tuned up to pitch. I've heard a lot of people complain about how strings, they stretch out, they stretch out, they stretch out. Metal strings don't stretch out as much as you think. I mean, certainly when you first put them on, to get them settled in, that is, tight around the post like they should be, tight up against the bridge plate like it should be underneath here, everything's set up properly, you can pull on the strings a bit and they'll sort of find their equilibrium. They'll find where they're comfortable and they'll stay that way. Once they're there, they don't do a whole lot of stretching. I mean, that's one of the nice things about metal, is that at least steel, it's not known for doing a lot of stretching. It does stretch some, of course it does, but it doesn't stretch as much as you say. And I just tune this up, and it's pretty much in tune. Now I'm tuning it. I've taken the time. I took the time to tune up the pitch. I took the time to pull on the strings a little bit and just get all the settling done, but it'll stay in tune now. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to keep going stretching. If your guitar, you find that the next day, oh gosh, it's playing flat. It's almost a quarter step flat everywhere. That more likely has to do with, if you did like I did, where I removed all the strings, the truss rod pulled back while the strings were off. I put the strings on, it's now pulling forward, the neck is now pulling forward, and it's going to take a little while for the strings to pull completely back to where the guitar finds its equilibrium with the truss rod and the tension of the strings pulling against each other. And that's usually what happens. It's not the strings stretching out more. It's generally the guitar doing its thing. So that's how you get your guitar strung properly so it won't go out of tune. If you have any questions, please list them below, and good luck. Take care.